Is going to be yet another barbarian brawl between the Arverni and the Getae. The Getae are some of my favorites. Have some of my favorite units in the game, and both because they look badass and because they are very effective and they can deal with most factions fairly effectively. So I have these two mercenary Thracians, two bow horse. I have 4 heavy spears, 4 noble swords, 2 mercenary axes, 3 Dacian skirmishers, and 2 spear horse. Now this is what I like about the Getae. You can bring really big, effective armies that has a nice mix of all kinds of units to deal with different situations. You have the spears to deal with cavalry and elephant chariots. You have they can also hold for a while in melee if you use the shield wall. You have the noble swords to deal with infantry, the Dacian skirmishers to deal with anything that needs killing, and then you have the axe warriors for flanking and rear charging. So my opponent is content to stay in the woods here. He has a lot of skirmishers there I see, so I'm just going to pull my guys out. I don't want an engagement against skirmishers that are in a forest. And it's quite obvious my opponent isn't going to come up to me on the hill here, and I don't blame him. He's going to camp in the forest. So one of us is going to have to take the engagement if we're going to make something happen, and I'm going to go on the offensive. No point in just camping on the hill. So I'm going to keep these guys here to keep an eye on what's going on, to see if there are any nasty surprises, and get some shots off on his heavy horse, reduce their hit points somewhat. It's not going to kill a whole bunch of guys, but it's always nice to do some damage. Just moving them back and forth, not really taking a lot of casualties from these Celtic slingers yet. Just keeping my whole force together in case there are any flanking forces moving around. I have effectively neutralized the flanking capabilities from this flank because I have my bow horse and my Thracian cavalry there. Now I am running my guys. I really wouldn't. I don't need to run them in this case, but I am doing it anyway. I'm going to rest them for a bit here. They are still fresh, but they might tire if I just keep running them. But I'm going to keep moving up here just to see what my opponent has in the woods, and I'm going to pull back if I see anything that worries me. Now I see these Celtic slingers, so I want to get into the woods as quickly as possible, close the distance, and see what else he has, because there are a lot of skirmishers here. So I'm thinking if he brought this many skirmishers and some heavy horse, I might be able to beat him in the infantry department. So moving up, heavy horse moving out, and here his infantry comes into view, spear nobles, oathsworn, and I'm going to avoid the spear nobles for now. I don't want to charge into spear nobles in a defensive formation. They're on a shield screen, so they can't move. But what I do want to do is I want to move up my skirmishers and get some shots off on his oathsworn. Now it's not going to be very effective doing this in the woods. These woods are quite dense, and his oathsworn I'm firing at them from the front. But hopefully it will entice a reaction from my opponent. I'm moving around with my bow horse to the flanks, moving my mercenary axe warriors to the flanks, and he's going to move his oathsworn forward when they start taking fire. And I'm just going to meet him head on with my noble swords. They are slightly worse. These guys are going to get wrecked on the charge by these naked warriors. Look at this. Just almost instantly wrecked. They're going to eat the charge, and that's going to enable me to get in these noble swords, and the naked warriors are going to start dropping quickly indeed. So I had to sacrifice that one unit, but that one unit took the charge from oathsworn and naked warriors, which is going to enable my noble swords to do better, and it's also going to enable my mercenary axe warriors to get into the mix. So using shield wall at the beginning here, because I need my guys to hold, focusing fire on the naked warriors. I can go back to normal game speed here. Two spear horse against 1 heavy horse. They should beat it fairly easily, and the heavy spears that was charged is out of the game. But now I'm into my opponent's rear lines here. I'm being able to chase his skirmishers away from multiple directions, and I'll be able to catch them fairly easily here. I am doing some friendly fire here with these javelins. I'll have to check the results screen to see just how much, but these oathsworn are also dying very effectively. Skirmishers are quickly becoming a non-factor in this battle. My spear horse already defeated the heavy horse over here, and I'm going to send them in to take care of the rest of the skirmishers. Naked warriors quickly becoming a non-factor. Noble swords are doing fine in the center, 65 guys left. So now I can support these fights here. And here you can kind of see the importance of having a fairly strong center, in that I'm able to punch through and then support these fights on the flank. Now my opponent is moving in with his spear nobles. They haven't done much yet. Well, they've gotten 54 kills, so I guess they have done something. I'm just going to send in my Dacian skirmishers to hold them here for a while. The Dacian skirmishers will lose, but it's going to stop these guys from getting rear charges. Skirmishers are being removed, and my axe warriors are doing decently well against these spear nobles. Getting some nice kills here and not dying too fast. Sending in these spears into the... It's actually the front of the spear nobles. I thought it was the rear, but it's the front. And now the battle looks decidedly in my favor here. So I could have been a bit more patient and rested my guys before sending them in, but I kind of wanted to put the pressure on my opponent and finish the game, basically. Noble swords going up against spear nobles. The unit is losing decisively because it's sandwiched in between mercenary axes and noble swords. And over here as well, his Oathsworn are being attacked in the rear by my noble swords, and the noble swords are pretty depleted, so they're going to lose this. But I'm able to support from multiple directions, and this fight is soon over. Using a heavy shot on his Oathsworn means they're going to die a lot faster, and now it's time to start rear charging all of these blobs. Just going to hold his spear noble general there for the time being, charge into the rear of these Oathsworn, and the spear horse are pretty decent when charging in like this. Charge bonus of 31, which isn't the best in the game, but it's fairly decent, enough to do some damage at least. Oathsworn going down, and I'm going to rear charge it with my bow horse and Thracians just to give them the morale penalty of being charged in the rear, to hopefully break them a bit faster. The spear nobles finished off my skirmishers, but now I'm able to send in noble swords, and the noble swords are going to make mincemeat of the noble spears. And that's a GG. So, looking at our builds, I had a decisive infantry advantage in that I had these 4 noble swords against my opponent's 3 Oathsworn, and he had 3 spear nobles, and I don't know how smart that is against the Getae. Maybe he expected me to bring some noble cavalry, but his Oathsworn did fairly well. Some of his spear nobles also did fairly well, but mostly against skirmishers and mid-level troops. Thracian cavalry did very well. The same can be said for the bow horsemen and even the spear horse. These guys died, that was their job. The mercenary axe warriors did okay. Some of these guys did decently, but since I had the numbers advantage and was able to kill 1161 men, then it's going to work out in the end. So I think my opponent kind of screwed himself over with these skirmishers, and with some of the spear nobles, they were decent actually. Some of them, they did better than his Oathsworn, but again against lower quality infantry, and I didn't really have enough to protect his skirmishers, and by staying in the woods he severely limited the effectiveness of his skirmishers. So GG and well played to Mystic Knight, and I'll see you again on the battlefield.